Galeforce. Oof. Where to begin? First of all, you get delayed by over a year, and when you do open, nobody likes you. Eventually, Galeforce would get the fanfare it deserved. But how on earth do you f*** up this bad? This is the story of Galeforce. The history of these compact multi-launch coasters began with Premier rides. Up to this point, Premier rides were mostly known for their linear induction motor coasters and failed prototypes. Rides like the Flight of Fear clones and the Mr. Freeze clones brought them notoriety in the late 90s. But as more manufacturers switched to LSMs, linear synchronous motors, Premier decided to join the competition. They would develop their own LSM coaster called the Skyrocket. The first of these would go to Kennywood in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania in 2010. Named Skyrocket, this coaster would be a showcase of what Premier can do with this model. Now, because this was a prototype, there were issues they had to address, like any prototype. Skyrocket would show parks the potential that Premier rides had. The second iteration would be very successful for Premier rides. Dubbed the Skyrocket 2, this model did well due to having features that most regional parks look for. It was thrilling and exciting while still being compact, reliable, and most importantly, affordable. 11 Skyrocket 2s were sold since debuting the first one in Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom in 2012. Premier would even build 2 custom Skyrockets in Full Throttle at Six Flags Magic Mountain and Icebreaker at SeaWorld Orlando. Seeing the success of the Skyrocket 2s, other companies joined the bandwagon to varying results. Around this same time frame, S&S Worldwide was struggling to find their place in the market. While S&S had really good coasters like the Fourth Dimension, Air Launch, and El Locos, they weren't exactly moneymakers. S&S were looking for something brand new that they would be known for, like their space shots. I think when they were building Dinoconda in China, they realized they could make a 4D coaster on a smaller scale. Intamin has done these types of rides to mixed results. I mean, this is where the infamous Green Lantern coaster came from. So with the new concept, S&S partnered with Rocky Mountain Construction to create the 4D free spin coaster. The first to come was Batman the Ride at Six Flags Fiesta Texas in 2015. This coaster was praised for its out-of-control feeling, even if some complained how it's a flat ride on wheels. Batman also improved on the Intamin Zack spins by having forced rotations and having the center of rotation be on the rider's stomach, making it more comfortable. 12 free spins would be sold since Batman. Granted, 7 of those went to Six Flags parks in a 5-year window, so that may have helped. But regardless, more people were clamoring for new S&S prototypes because of Batman. The first of S&S's new prototype would go to a park that's lacking in space. In 1959, Playland's Castaway Cove would open to the public. Located in Ocean City on the Jersey Shore, this park thrives on the next-door boardwalk and beach to attract visitors. 64 years later, this park is still going strong. Even when disasters struck like Hurricane Sandy in 2012 and a recent fire that burned their front entrance in 2021, this park continues to thrive. However, there is one major issue that prevents Playland from expanding. That reason is the lack of land that Playland has. If you look at Playland on Google Maps, you'll notice that Playland is surrounded by hotels, businesses, and the beach. The lack of room prevents parks from adding anything new unless they get creative or remove something. It's this reason why parks like Knott's Berry Farm rarely ever get a new coaster. I mean, I have no idea what happened to those Giga Coaster plans. Not to mention, whenever they want to add something, there's the danger of neighbors complaining of noise and therefore canceling any projects. Because of this, Playland has to both remove rides and buildings and be quiet enough to get things approved. That's what they did in 2015 when they removed both their Pinfari Looping Zyklon and Zier Flitzer for a major expansion. When Playland announced the removal of their 2 biggest coasters, they also announced their replacements. They were specifically adding 3 roller coasters for the 2016 season. One of them is an SBF Visa spinning coaster. This one is nothing to shout at, as any park from small FECs to major parks can get one. The second is an E&F Miler family coaster called Wild Waves. This one is already noteworthy, as it's not one of their kiddie coasters and more like their high milers like Hurricane at Fun Spot. But the real star of the show would be Galeforce. Galeforce is a prototype S&S LSM triple launch coaster. Now this layout is weird, but I'll do my best to describe them. The ride starts with a swing launch. This section is when the train launches forwards, then backwards, and forwards again. This leads to a top hat, turning 180 degrees. Now, due to where the ride is positioned, you don't get the best view of the beach. Following the top hat is this weird kickflip element. I don't really know how else to describe this weird element. It's like the cross of a funky airtime hill and a non-inverting Immelman. After this is a traditional non-inverting Immelman followed by a non-inverting dive loop into the station. This completes the 1,269 feet or 387 meters of track. At 125 feet or 38 meters tall with top speeds of 64 miles per hour or 103 kilometers per hour, Galeforce does have good pacing. This layout is definitely funky, as this was meant to take up as little space and doesn't go upside down, but this does make for an exciting ride. Now, I said this was going to open in 2016, but I'd be dropping the ball if I didn't mention the many problems. Both Galeforce and Wild Waves got delayed by over a year. It's unknown why Wild Waves got delayed, however, Galeforce had an ocean of problems. According to Playland, Galeforce was delayed due to a faulty track piece, misalignment with the track, and issues with the trains. What they're saying is that they pretty much up the construction of Galeforce. This screw-up prevented Galeforce from opening until Memorial Day 2017, where they would encounter even more problems. When Galeforce finally opened in 2017, people rode it only to encounter one of the roughest steel coasters they've ridden. Almost immediately, everyone complained about Galeforce, saying it's a really bad roller coaster. The main complaint from these guests was that the coaster was one of the rattliest roller coasters in the world. Whenever riding a coaster, you never want it to be rough, as that causes all sorts of pain and headaches. This is why rides such as Goliath at Six Flags New England are so hated. The fact that Galeforce is this rough when it's brand new is very concerning. The source of this rattle goes back to the troubled construction. The misaligned track from the construction causes the coaster to not run properly. You know you up when your brand new ride gets a lot of flack. I mean, even the launch section is rough. Oh, I forgot to mention that this is S&S's one and only LSM coaster. Remember how I said most companies are switching to LSMs? Well, S&S is the lone company to prefer using different technology, that being compressed air. So the launches may also contribute to the problems with Galeforce. The good news is that Galeforce would soon get better. Due to the wrecked condition that Galeforce was in, Playland and S&S had to go back and retrack the ride for the 2018 season. Now, retracking a coaster is completely normal for a wood coaster. For a steel coaster to get a full retrack like this is unprecedented, especially for a one-year coaster. The reason why steel coasters rarely get a retrack is because parks would rather use that money for a brand new ride. Steel is supposed to last a long time due to steel being a stronger material, whereas wood has to be replaced on a yearly basis. Plus, you'd have to replace the entire track of a steel coaster, whereas with wood, you can just replace it in only a couple spots a year. Not to mention that the cost to retrack a steel coaster costs as much as a brand new coaster. So you'd be essentially buying a brand new coaster, but without the return of investment. Now, steel retracks have been done before, such as the Incredible Hulk at Islands of Adventure and, funny enough, Great Nor'easter down the road at Maury's Piers. Great Nor'easter was another ride on the Jersey Shore that was hated for its rough ride. Maury's invested money into fixing Great Nor'easter, the result of which being Great Nor'easter is now loved by guests and one of the best in New Jersey. Seeing how well Great Nor'easter's retrack did, Playland decided to do the same thing for Galeforce. They already spent millions on this prototype and they are out of room, so it's not like they could do anything else. When Galeforce reopened for the 2018 season, guests were shocked by how good it is, considering the dumpster fire it was just a year ago. With a smoother ride, guests could appreciate the ride more, pulling both positive and negative G-forces. Galeforce has now become one of the most underrated coasters of all time. If that wasn't enough, Playland offers a double cycle of Galeforce now. This means that you get to do the layout of Galeforce twice, which definitely helps get your money's worth. I mean, this coaster costs like $10, like what the hell. Also, don't expect to ride with your loose articles. I forgot when this happened, but water dummies fell from the ride and smacked the roof of a nearby hotel. So Playland has everyone store their items in cubbies on the station. Now, because of Galeforce's early issues, this is the only LSM coaster that S&S has created. I hope S&S makes more of these because I heard Galeforce is a great ride. As for this style of roller coasters, other companies started offering their takes. Intamin debuted their take in Sandy's Blasting Bronco at the American Dream Mall 2 hours away from Playland. However, this coaster has had a whirlwind of problems, even more so than Galeforce, so definitely look out for our Sandy's video. Gerstlauer has a variant of their Infinity coasters that includes a swing launch, and Zamperla announced their take in the Double Heart. If there's one thing to take away from this, it's that engineering is tough, and executing it is even harder. The problems with Galeforce should not be seen as a failure, but as a learning experience. I applaud Playland and S&S for doing something risky with Galeforce, and I hope both companies be successful. However, this wouldn't be the last of S&S's problematic prototypes. For that, I'd like to introduce Steel Curtain, but that is a story for another day. Thank you all so much for watching this video. This video is part of a series where we dive into roller coasters and other amusement rides history and dynamics. Please give me a like and consider subscribing, as that motivates me to make more awesome content just like this in the future. This is the Coaster Flood, riding out.